Good afternoon. Christ is risen. Most Reverend Bishop of Thessalonica, Eminences, dear Bishop Winter, dear Abbot, Mr. Secretary General of the A.I.O., dear Mr. Migdalis, professors, ladies and gentlemen, deputies, I think that it is important to the decision of the organizers for this conference. The agenda responds to crucial challenges which face Europe in its entirety. What will be the future of Europe? On which values will this future be based on? And what will be the unifying parts that will allow the peoples of Europe to have a distinct political and cultural entity? An entity and unity which will respect and not steamroll through differences of peoples, but it will deal with them as a contribution and mutual influence. There is a strong tendency to delete traditional values of European civilization, downgrading of classical studies, and ousting of the Christian past. And it's the woke culture agenda which tries to throw to the bonfire all the achievements of European civilization on the basis of political correctness. In this environment, the contribution of Christianity is considered as backwards. But what would Europe be without the church fathers, without its temples and churches? And Thessalonica itself has a lot of these churches without hymnography and church music. These values would there be any space for Hellenism without Orthodoxy? Would it have survived the Turkish domination for so many centuries without the church? What about Cyprus, so far away from the mainland Greece? If it weren't for Orthodoxy to keep up the morale, Hellenism would have no future. So these deconstructive approaches lack a historical approach and beget serious dangers for the future of Europe and undermine European unity at a time when the challenges faced by Europe are serious. Now, in this round table, and where I'm moderated together with our beloved Katerina, will deal with this matter on how ecclesiastical steps and instances understand Christian values for society. Christian values are based on the word of a revealed God, and they have matured in time within church and within society. However, in this era of confusion and loss of spiritual orientation, we need to redefine them to find them again, redefine them, and promote them as compass for our search. And citizen society ought to have a word in this within the spirit of freedom. And this means that we have to avoid a top-down approach which imposes ideas that are contrary to the majority of the population. Although the majority of European peoples are Christian, there are no references to Christianity. The Church, with its century-old experience, is an institution that has timeless and spatial-less dimensions, and it can approach the truth of issues apart from the topical, and identify the needs of man outside interests which may come from outside factors. We have to promote moral values as opposed to materialistic ones. And this is what our world needs, because our world seems to be drowned in a confusion, in an individualistic society. And with these views, and believing firmly that Christian values should be the signpost for our future tomorrow, I will give the floor to our speakers, hoping they will enlighten us. I will now give the floor to Katerina.
I would like to express my gratitude to our co-moderator, Mr. Leonidou, who is a distinguished lawyer and member of the parliament in Cyprus. And he already, with his succinct overview, introduced us into the topic. We have a distinguished panel of church leaders, of monastics and academics who are going to reflect on our topic. And I would like to immediately invite our local host, gracious host, His Holiness Metropolitan Theophilos of Thessaloniki, to offer his reflections on this topic.
Philotheos.
What did I say?
Theophilos.
I'm sorry.
Thank you for this occasion to touch upon an important matter, which is the promotion and experiencing of church values. Dear fathers, ladies and gentlemen, there is a need for balance in life. Measure, which ancient Greeks defined as the best, and the application of this measure to ourselves is not always easy. Church fathers note that it is easier for someone to give money rather than tame oneself, so that he will always be vigilant with a clear conscience. And this is shown by the very story of mankind. War's exploitation of the weak by the strong. This is human history ever since the beginning. Peace, charity, compassion are ideals that are desired but are not ready. There was a great progress in social aspects in Europe, but not the same as in spiritual side. man is left alone with technology, and technology allows modern man to communicate with everyone around the globe. And traveling has become shorter, and we live as capitalism is the only winner and of this struggle. And there is an attempt to impose ideologies and religions which are molded and shaped by economic interests or even organizations. And therefore, it is clear that we need to promote Christian values, social justice, freedom, human dignity, and there is respect towards these values, because these values are a sort of break for the decisions of the powerful of the earth who think only of themselves. Orthodox Christian ethics is based on the commandments of God for man, but at the same time, the love of man for his neighbor, which is also a commandment. For Christianity, morality in ethics is the adherence to certain values and not to certain prohibitions that are imposed by a sort of autarkic deity. Our religion is based on a revelation and is an imitation of Christ. Therefore, Orthodox Christian ethos is not the sum of certain moral issues. It's a way of life through man, God, and the church. A Christian is within society, but also outside it, because his values are not topical, but they're timeless and eternal, because they're based on the revelation of God. In Christian church fathers, ethos is a result, emanates from morality. It's an application of our belief in its various expressions. Therefore, Orthodox ethos is related to the axis of faith, the Trinitarian doctrine. God is one in unity, but Trinity in its being. And therefore we have the theological, Christological, and pneumatological aspects. And Christian charity is essentially the way man imitates and becomes an imitator of Christ. Therefore, Orthodox ethos overcomes the framework of a certain morality and any attempt of regulation and normative approach. Ethos is a process from biological individuality towards a collective existence. This is the very ontological context, because it aims at deification as the new way of existence for man, for overcoming perishment and death. And for this reason, Christian values do not establish a new value code, but it's an expression of the ethos of the church. They do not emanate from human agreements, but they emanate from the experience of living the body of Christ through the centuries. And the church living within the words of the gospel was never indifferent to the actions of politicians and societies. even during persecution, the church always took care of the neighbor. And when persecution stopped, asked the state, frequently exerting pressure on the state, or expressing strong protest towards decisions which it's what the ancient Gauls were afraid of, that the sky would fall on their heads. So the church was against people. Think of Saint Ambrosius, who opposed Emperor Theodosius, or Saint John Chrysostom, who conflicted with the empress to protect a widow. So what I would like to say today is that we cannot maintain the unity of people alive if we leave it or exclusively to economic interests and political ideologies, or even religious ideologies. Cynicism, the replacement of justice by brute force, forces which want to pulverize humanity. Our civilization has a lot to do, not for benefit or gain, but for more dignity towards the human person. The church is always at the side of such a struggle, and Christian values are the force which, without going against tolerance of religion, without going against fundamental human rights or becoming an obstacle to the progress of non-Christian people, they can exploit humaneness, that is to say, the presence of Christ within us, the presence of God within us. And we ought to have this in view in terms of how we will move in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Holiness Philotheos, for this very deep reflection on the Christian ethos and the Christian values as an expression of a particular way of life. I would like now to invite His Excellency Bishop Mariano Crociata, the President of the Commission of the Bishops' Conferences of the EU. This is the representation of the Vatican to the European Union, to give his own reflection on the topic.
Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency.
Good afternoon to you all. To start with, it seems necessary for me to dedicate a word to the Catholic social teaching. It can be seen as a corpus of moral principles and values regarding social life. Actually, from its very beginning, at the end of the 19th century, it has gathered an entire series of interpretations and orientations about all the aspects of social life. From the point of view of the Catholic social teaching, the values are considered altogether as integral part of an inseparable living organism that form a kind of homogeneous corpus. The compendium of the social doctrine of the Church distinguishes between principles and values. As principles are mentioned the dignity of the human person, the common good, the universal destination of the goods, the subsidiarity, the participation, the solidarity. They constitute that primary articulation of the truth of society. That implies the question of freedom and of the meaning of life in society. Furthermore, they have a profoundly moral significance because they refer to the ultimate and organizational foundations of life in society that foster the authentic development of human being and his dignity. These are inherent to the proper structuring and ordered leading of life in society and suppose both the practice of the fundamental principles of social life and the personal exercise of virtue. In reality, the social teaching of the Church is a living organism, like society is, undergoing a continuous change. Acknowledging these changes requires a watchful eye that interprets what happens and is able to see what is necessary to do. This is what we call discernment. In the last decades, we can observe how the Catholic magisterium has monitored the transformation of our society, as recently demonstrated by the encyclical letter of Pope Francis Laudato Si and the apostolic exhortation Laudate Deum. In them, the economic consequence of environmental pollution are outlined, condemning this phenomenon and inviting people in charge of public life to take the necessary measures, and at the same time conveying the common citizens to need for a different lifestyle are ways that can lead to a change in this area of social life. We can also refer to the enormous activity of church institutions like Caritas that exhibit concrete initiatives taken to counteract the aftermath of the economic crisis that has affected many people in our societies, bringing poverty and deprivation. Moreover, the research carried out not only in the recent times regarding the organization of the economic mechanisms that ultimately rule social life deserves to be mentioned. An idea of economy focused only on profit leads to the enormous contrasts that our societies experience each day between the very few with enormous wealth and the many who suffer hunger and misfortune. The economy has the opportunity to be inspired by the principles of Christian social teaching. This is the case of the social market economy and the civil economy. We have something to say and contribute on these issues, even if as church must not be involved in direct social and political responsibility. An important principle in the perspective of social teaching is that of subsidiarity, which concerns the intermediate social groupings and, more in general, all the spontaneous expressions of civil society. This is an issue of real interest in this time, because many forms of populism are affecting us. Populism is based on a relation or supposed relation between governments and people without any kind of social mediation. In this way, governments occupy all the political space, while people are left at the mercy of all, in a perfect insulation, which today has a precise name: individualism. One of the effects of this situation is also economic. In fact, the individual is more and more a victim of the market, a mere consumer. Great companies are increasingly carrying out economic activity of entrepreneurship and trade. What is lacking, though, is the due space for many individuals to undertake an economic activity. But we must not forget that economic freedom is a sign of the level of real freedom in a society. Especially observatory of the Catholic social teaching, not only on economy, is COMECE, as we heard this morning by Father Baruch Prieto, by whom that teaching is continuously applied to all the matters dealt with by the European Commission and other European institutions. It has at its disposal a know-how acquired along more than 40 years on the values involved in the activity of European institutions. The contents of official documents, as well as of many kinds of issues, are regularly subject to consultation. The dialogue that is regularly held is a way for the Church to intervene and express the Christian vision of the values at stake in this time. This is an institutional way to let Christian values be known and point them out to the attention of the European institution. However, we know that the Church and the faithful can contribute in various manners to the knowledge and the spreading of Catholic social teaching. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for this rich presentation and the helpful distinction that you gave us between principles and values as we reflect on Christian values and the transformation of society.